They emerged as if from a cloud of smoke. Men in white mantles, emblazoned with the Crimson Cross. Initially, just 9 knights, swearing an oath to secure the route to the Holy Land. They swiftly evolved into a formidable, globally influential military order, wielding control over vast fortresses, immense wealth, and secrets that could shake the foundations of Europe. They were not mere soldiers. Where the power of the sword reached its limit, the authority of specialized knowledge began. They parleyed with monarchs, held the popes in their thrall, vanished into the deserts of the Levant, and were rumored to whisper the location of legendary relics. They styled themselves as warriors of the light, marching under the banner of the cross and in the name of God. Yet in their wake, they left behind the scorched earth of villages, the desperate pleas around campfires, and blood staining the altars of conquest. They claimed, "It is the will of heaven." But does true holiness necessitate the smoke of burned libraries or the cries of those who refuse to bend the knee to their power? Then, the hammer came down. Executions, false accusations, official condemnations, and a single, persistent question continues to haunt the halls of academia and romanticism. Who were they, truly? Knights of God, sworn to chivalry, or a powerful, monastic terror cloaked in white? Unraveling the mystery, the rise of the warrior monks. Let's plunge into the era of the Crusades, secret rites of passage, forbidden lore, and enduring ancient myths. We'll trace the lineage of the Templars, how they ascended to such towering power, the true reasons behind their shocking collapse, and how much of their story is historical fact versus the fear of those who coveted their influence. We will follow the trail of those who called themselves the poor fellow soldiers of Christ and of the Temple of Solomon, and try to understand their dual nature. Were they the genuine guardians of the sacred sites, or the executioners of a religious terror that burned and broke wills in the name of the cross? More than just swords, the paradox of the Templars. Unlike the typical knights of the age who fought for personal honor, glory, or a patch of land, the Templars were a different kettle of fish. They were God's elite troops, yet they bowed to no earthly king. They were monks, bound by religious vows, yet they commanded some of the most lethal and disciplined forces of the medieval world. Their rule technically stipulated poverty, but the riches they amassed, hidden in the vaults of their commanderies and temples, still set the minds of treasure hunters ablaze today. But why did the Templars, specifically, become the poster child for mysteries, conspiracies, and vanished artifacts? After all, that era saw the rise of numerous formidable military orders, such as the Hospitallers, the Teutonic Knights, and the Knights of St. Lazarus. Yet, it is the Templars, the Knights of the Temple, who remain etched in memory as the purported custodians of the Grail, the masters of esoteric knowledge, and the victims of the ultimate betrayal. The spark that lit the fire, the First Crusade. To grasp the origin of this legend, we must travel back to 11th century Europe, a world where faith was the final arbiter of a nation's fate, and where chivalry's highest aspiration was to die securing Jerusalem. This was the crucible of the Crusades, a conflict that gave birth to both saints and scoundrels. And in this war, the Templars were to be both the shining heroes and the ultimate scapegoats. By the close of the 11th century, Europe was teetering on the edge of a great upheaval. The scattered kingdoms were constantly at loggerheads. Knighthood was cementing its role as the dominant military elite, and the Catholic Church was frantically searching for ways to shore up its authority. Though the power of the Pope was on the rise, the Christian world was consumed by anxiety. The Holy Land remained in Muslim hands, an unbearable thought for the faithful. Everything changed in 1095 when Pope Urban II delivered a speech at the Council of Clermont, a sermon that triggered one of the Middle Ages' most colossal movements. He declared that the Muslims were not only holding Jerusalem, but were actively oppressing Christians, desecrating holy sites, and razing churches. His words unleashed a tsunami of religious fervor and zealotry across Europe. The call to arms, salvation for the sword. But the Pope's appeal was not just about righteous anger. Urban II promised the Crusaders a bribe of eternal significance. All who journeyed to the Holy Land would receive a full remission of their sins. This was a game changer, regardless of who a man was, a nobleman, a peasant, or even a hardened criminal. He could cleanse his soul and guarantee his passage to paradise. The Pope's call resonated at a time when Europe was primed for the march. Feudal lords craved new territories, knights sought new battles, and the destitute masses saw a chance for a new life. For countless people, the Crusades represented a throw of the dice to change their destiny. Thus, in 1096, the first columns of people who had taken up the cross began their trek eastward. It was an unruly deluge. Thousands, most of whom had no weapon, no training, and no military discipline. They were led by a fanatical preacher, Peter the Hermit, who promised them that God himself would lead them to victory. But the reality was brutal and swift. The People's Crusade, a disaster in the making. This ill-equipped, poorly prepared mob, famously known as the People's Crusade, failed to even reach the Holy Land in any effective fighting capacity. They streamed across the Balkans, plundering and laying waste to everything in their path. Upon reaching the Byzantine borders, they became an immediate headache for the Christian emperor himself. However, the true disaster awaited them further east. In Asia Minor, they were met by the army of the Seljuk Turks, who massacred the Crusader mob in a series of engagements. Only small, shattered groups managed to limp to Constantinople, where the emperor quickly shipped them off to deal with the problem. The real army arrives, the nightly campaign. Yet, in their footsteps followed the true military machine. In 1097, the armies of the Western European knights assembled. These were feudal forces composed of well-trained, professional warriors. These were men accustomed to the rigors of war, who understood that the march to the Holy Land was not merely a pilgrimage, but a full-blown military operation. They didn't leave chaos in their wake, like the People's Crusade. They established discipline, prepared for pitched battles, and forged alliances. Among them were seasoned commanders like Godfrey of Bouillon, Raymond of Toulouse, and Bohemond of Taranto, hardened warriors driven by both military ambition and personal gain. When their army marched east, the Crusaders encountered a fundamentally different world. Asia Minor was firmly controlled by the Seljuks, a powerful, highly organized force that had shattered the Byzantines at the Battle of Manzikert. But the Crusaders proved themselves to be equally relentless. They took cities by storm, traversed hostile territory, battled disease, famine, and sweltering heat, yet they kept their eyes on the prize. They were driven toward their ultimate goal, the Holy Land. This military-grade campaign was the genesis of the Crusader states in the East. They arrived not simply as pilgrims, but as an army determined not only to liberate Christian holy sites, but to carve out a permanent foothold in those lands. This was the first, crucial step toward establishing the Crusader states and the eventual emergence of the first military orders. Amidst the chaos of war and the fire of religious fanaticism, the ideas that would, in a few decades, lead to the formation of the Middle Ages' most iconic knights, the Order of the Templars, were already taking root. The fall of Jerusalem, triumph and terror. After years of relentless marching, endless combat, and profound hardship, the Crusader army finally reached its objective. They had crossed thousands of miles, survived battles in Asia Minor, sickness, and starvation. But all of this was merely the prelude to the ultimate trial: Jerusalem, the holy city, for which they had abandoned their homes, risked their lives, and dreamed of eternal salvation. The city was the final target of the First Crusade, and for many, its capture meant the fulfillment of their sacred vow to God. But as the knights gazed upon the walls of the holy city, they were confronted with a grim reality. Ahead lay one of the most grueling sieges of their lives. Jerusalem was, at that time, under the control of the Egyptian Fatimids, a powerful Muslim dynasty. The city was heavily fortified. Its walls seemed utterly impregnable. The defenders knew the Crusaders would not retreat and were ready to fight to the last man. Meanwhile, the Crusaders were in a terrible state. The blistering heat, the acute lack of water, and the dwindling food supplies turned their camp into a veritable hell. They were losing men to disease and thirst, but retreat was not an option. The final push: blood on the Temple Mount. Realizing that an assault without siege engines was a recipe for failure, the Crusaders began desperately scavenging for timber to construct towers and battering rams. This proved a massive challenge, as there were virtually no trees in the immediate vicinity of Jerusalem. They had to dismantle houses, haul heavy logs from far-off locations, all under the blazing sun. Yet, within the camp, a wave of religious fervor began to rise. The warriors fasted, prayed, and then walked barefoot around the city in a massive procession, symbolically echoing the path that, according to tradition, the people of Jericho took before their walls miraculously fell. The final assault commenced on July 14th. For 2 days, the Crusaders desperately hammered the walls, but the defenders repelled them with fierce tenacity. It was only at dawn on July 15th that they managed to breach the city. It was a moment of absolute triumph and unspeakable horror. As the Crusaders poured into Jerusalem, a massacre began. The warriors who had spent years fighting toward this goal now showed no mercy. The streets ran slick with blood, and homes became death traps for the civilian population. Chronicles describe scenes that shock the modern sensibility. Swords were kept busy, bodies were piled high, and blood literally flowed down the steps of the Temple Mount. In the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, the knights knelt, ankles deep in blood, to give thanks to God for their victory. A geopolitical blunder, the seeds of future war. But what did this victory truly mean in the long run? The Crusaders believed that Christian dominion over Jerusalem would now be eternal. However, the butchery enacted in the city not only annihilated the Muslim and Jewish population, but also forged the Crusaders into hated invaders for the entire Middle East. In the Islamic world, this event became the epitome of Christian brutality, and the desire for vengeance for Jerusalem became an indelible part of the Muslim rulers' consciousness. From a military standpoint, the Crusaders had won. From a geopolitical perspective, they had committed one of history's greatest blunders. Instead of seeking to solidify an alliance with local rulers or offering a compromise, they laid the groundwork for centuries of future conflict. Their triumph was the foretelling of their own catastrophe. The new question: who will hold the line? Now, they faced a new question: how do we hold on to the Holy Land? The warriors who had reached Jerusalem couldn't remain there indefinitely. Many were chomping at the bit to return home, eager to claim whatever spoils they could. But who would then defend the city? Who could maintain control in this dangerous, relentlessly hostile region? Thus, a new idea took shape: the creation of elite warrior monks who would not just be knights, but the permanent guardians of the Holy Land. And among the first of these men were those who would soon be known as the Poor Knights of Christ. The world would come to know them as the Templars. The birth of an order. Monks with swords. The Crusaders found themselves ringed by Muslim powers whom they had mortally offended by wiping out the population of Jerusalem. The Seljuks in Syria and the Fatimids in Egypt were not about to let this loss stand unchallenged. They were mustering their strength, preparing for the counterstrike. Yet, the threat came not only from external foes, but from within. Following the conquest of Jerusalem, thousands of pilgrims began to flood into the Holy Land. They dreamed of seeing the Holy Sepulchre, of praying in the places where Christ was said to have walked. But their journey took them through territory that was anything but secure. Caravans were frequent targets for bandits and Muslim detachments operating from the hills and deserts. Local tribes preyed on travelers, taking gold, supplies, and sometimes killing everyone without exception. To leave Jerusalem without an armed escort was tantamount to a death sentence. The Crusaders tried to impose order, but their forces were too stretched. The army was small, and garrisons were scattered across the territory. Every new knight arriving from Europe was often more of a mercenary than a protector of the kingdom. He fought for himself, for his share of the loot, not for the Holy Land. In 1119, a decade after the conquest of Jerusalem, a group of knights led by Hugues de Payens proposed a radical initiative to King Baldwin II. They declared their willingness to guard the roads and protect pilgrims, not as mercenaries or vassals, but as monks who had sworn an oath of fidelity to God. This was unheard of. At the time, knighthood and monasticism were two worlds apart. Monks took vows of non-possessiveness and non-violence. Knights lived by war and plunder. But here, a new breed of warrior emerged, the monk with a sword. They committed to fighting, not for riches, but for their faith. Baldwin supported the idea and quartered them in buildings on the site of the former Al-Aqsa Mosque, located on the Temple Mount. This location, believed to be the spot of King Solomon's destroyed temple, gave the knights their enduring name: the Order of the Poor Knights of Christ and of the Temple of Solomon, or the Templars. Poverty and piety. The early days. Initially, they could truly be called poor. They had neither wealth nor influential patrons. Legend has it that in their early years, their symbol was the image of two knights riding a single horse, a stark representation of their humility and destitution. They subsisted on alms, wore simple white mantles, and adhered to strict discipline. Their mission was hazardous: patrolling roads, guarding pilgrims, fighting bandits and Muslim patrols. Despite their asceticism, they were backed by a powerful concept: to be the defenders of Christendom, to live by a rigid rule, and to fight not for self-interest, but for God. Gradually, word of these knights reached Europe. The Templars began to attract the attention of noble families, who saw in them not just warriors, but a new archetype of Christian hero. It soon became clear that the Templars had not only survived, but had earned a reputation as the finest defenders of the Holy Land. However, their status remained precarious. Without the official sanction of the Church, their position was undefined. They were knights, but answered to no king. They were monks, but did not belong to a traditional order. Papal blessing. The moment everything changed. The definitive resolution came in 1129 at the Council of Troyes. It was here that the Templars were officially recognized by the Catholic Church as a monastic military order. Their rule was authored by the influential theologian Bernard of Clairvaux, one of the principal ideologues of the crusading movement. He presented the Templars as the ideal knights of God, men who did not strive for earthly fame, but waged a holy war in the name of the faith. The recognition of the order meant that the Templars now answered directly to the Pope and not to any secular ruler. This granted them enormous privileges: independence from local laws, exemption from taxes, the ability to establish their own fortresses, and the authority to collect donations across all of Europe. From this moment on, the order grew exponentially. Noble knights, masters of warfare, flocked to join. European aristocrats donated lands and fortunes to the order, viewing it as a guaranteed way to absolve their sins. The Pope himself supported them as his personal army in the Holy Land. The strict rule, a system built for war. Their lives were governed by austere regulations that successfully fused monastic asceticism with rigorous military training. This made them a unique caste of warriors, distinct from all other chivalric orders of the era. Every Templar swore 3 primary vows: chastity, poverty, and obedience. This meant a complete rejection of personal life, property, and ambition. Upon entering the order, a knight renounced his titles, lands, and inheritance. If he was married, he had to leave his family forever. If he owned castles or estates, he transferred their ownership to the order. From that point on, his only family was his brothers in the order, and his home was the network of fortresses and commanderies scattered across Europe and the Holy Land. The Order of the Templars was highly organized and maintained a strict hierarchy that set it apart from typical feudal armies. Where ordinary knights obeyed their independent liege lords, the Templars were a part of a rigidly structured system, answerable to a single set of laws. At the apex of the order stood the Grand Master. Elected for life, he wielded absolute, near-sovereign power. The Master not only commanded the military forces, but also personally negotiated with kings, popes, and Byzantine emperors. He had the authority to declare wars, conclude peace treaties, and issue edicts concerning both military campaigns and the order's internal administration. The command structure, a well-oiled military engine. The order's rigid hierarchy was the backbone of its might. The marshal, the chief military commander. He was responsible for the training of the knights, the supply chain, and battlefield tactics. He devised strategies, allocated forces, and personally led the charge in battle when the Grand Master was not present. The seneschal. He managed the entire administrative system of the order. He oversaw the finances, resource distribution, appointed heads of individual commanderies, and controlled the collection of revenue and donations. Commanders. These officials managed the order's fortresses, castles, and land holdings across different regions. In the Holy Land, they functioned as military governors, supervising defense and maintaining constant combat readiness. In Europe, they were responsible for fundraising, recruiting new members, and liaising with local nobility. The ranks, from elite knights to local auxiliaries. The order's members reflected its diverse operational needs. Knights, chevaliers, the order's elite. Heavily armed horsemen, they were the medieval world's special forces. They were among the most disciplined and combat-effective warriors of their time. Sergeants, sergeants. Warriors of lower birth, they formed a significant proportion of the Templar forces. They served as heavy infantry, managed castles, and oversaw agricultural and economic affairs. Many were squires to the knights, but could also command smaller detachments. Chaplains, chapelains, priests who provided spiritual support for the knights, celebrating Mass and hearing confession. Their presence underscored the order's dual monastic identity. Turcopoles, light cavalry recruited from the local Eastern Christian population. They were not full members of the order, but served in combat units, helping the Templars adapt to the rapid maneuvering tactics of Muslim light cavalry. This entire structure operated with the precision of a single machine, making the order an incredibly effective organization. The Iron Discipline. Life under the rule. A Templar's life was governed by the strict rule adopted in 1129. It regulated every facet of a brother's existence, how they were to dress, eat, sleep, train, and even observe silence. Daily routine. The day began at dawn with prayer. This was followed by a simple breakfast: bread, vegetables, beans, fish, or meat, though the latter was limited to no more than 3 times a week. Templars were forbidden from eating alone. Meals were taken in complete silence, while religious texts were read aloud. Military training. After the meal, the rigorous military training began. Templars practiced horsemanship, archery, and swordsmanship daily. Special emphasis was placed on close order drill. Knights learned to charge as a unified front, protect their comrades, and react instantly to commands. Beyond combat, life was not solely focused on warfare. Templars also cared for horses, maintained their weapons, studied maps, and copied documents. Many were proficient in multiple languages, as the order constantly engaged in negotiations with Byzantium, Arab states, and European monarchs. The vow of obedience. The vow of obedience held paramount importance. Unlike secular knights who might refuse orders or retreat, Templars had no right to independent decision. They were obligated to fight to the very end, even if vastly outnumbered. Abandoning a battle without an order was deemed treason, punishable by expulsion. This iron discipline and strict rule made them one of the most feared fighting forces of the Middle Ages. Where ordinary knights might waver or flee, the Templars fought to the last man. Their organization, loyalty to the Brotherhood, and absolute dedication to the mission created an aura of invincibility around them. The Red Cross on white, a symbol of sacrifice and power. Every knightly order had its emblem, but the Templars' Red Cross on a white mantle became one of history's most recognized symbols. Initially, the brothers wore only simple white clothing, signifying their humility, rejection of personal ambition, and commitment to spiritual purity. The white color symbolized innocence and holiness, a reminder that Templars were not ordinary knights, but monks dedicated to God's service. In 1147, however, Pope Eugene III officially granted the order the right to bear the Red Cross, a powerful sign of martyrdom, sacrifice, and the readiness to die for the faith. In battle, this symbol transformed the Templars from mere warriors into God's chosen champions. In battle, it reminded them that their death would not be in vain, as they fought for a cause greater than any earthly goal. The crimson color represented the blood shed for Christ and the order's solemn vow to never retreat before the enemy. Templars considered death in combat the greatest victory, as a fallen knight was believed to enter the kingdom of heaven immediately. In Europe, unlike secular knights who decorated their surcoats with personal heraldry, gold, and furs, the Templars' attire remained strictly austere. They were forbidden from wearing personal badges of honor, emphasizing equality within the order. A political marker. Over time, the symbol evolved into a sign of power. Seeing the cross, European monarchs understood that they faced members of a mighty organization that answered to no king, acting solely on the will of the Pope. The first international bankers, the wealth of the temple. Initially, the Templars truly lived up to their name, the Poor Knights of Christ. They had no personal wealth or possessions, they subsisted entirely on donations that poured in from Christians across Europe. Noble families, considering it their duty to support the Holy Land, gifted the order lands, castles, money, and agricultural estates. But as the order's influence grew, so did its holdings. The Templars didn't just accumulate gold, they knew how to manage it shrewdly. Unlike secular feudal lords who squandered fortunes on lavish feasts and tournaments, the order used its resources with strict, calculated efficiency. Financial innovation. Their network of commanderies was spread across Europe, with each node functioning as a deposit vault, transit point, and clearinghouse. The Templars gradually transformed into a financial entity comparable to the first international bank. The travel check system. One of the order's key innovations was the system of deposits and checks. European pilgrims, risking robbery on the road to the Holy Land, could leave their money at a commandery in Paris or London and receive a special coded document. This document could then be presented at another commandery, say in Acre or Jerusalem, to receive the equivalent sum. The Templars essentially invented the traveler's check, making Mediterranean travel far safer. Lending and influence. Crucially, this gave the order immense financial leverage. Holding funds on deposit allowed them to put the money into circulation, investing in fortress construction, and purchasing arms and equipment. Eventually, even kings and noble families began borrowing money from the order. The Templars loaned colossal sums to monarchs, but in return demanded guarantees, lands, privileges, and sometimes even political concessions. The unconquered fortresses, a state within a state. The Templars were a genuine state structure within the Crusader world. They commanded not only the best-trained fighting force, but also their own territories, garrisons, a fleet, and a sophisticated system of governance. Unlike kingdoms dependent on vassal knights, the Templars' power rested on rigid discipline and meticulously organized defense. The key instruments of their power were the fortresses scattered throughout the Middle East. These outposts were impregnable strongholds that protected conquered territories, controlled trade routes, and ensured strategic dominance in the region. The order built its castles to be resistant to both assault and long siege. Crac des Chevaliers, the most famous of all, the greatest Crusader castle, located in modern-day Ria. This colossal fortress towered over 600 meters high, offering a complete view of the surrounding area. It stood on the vital road between Antioch and Tripoli, controlling the entire northern Crusader route. Crac des Chevaliers was a genuine fortress city, designed for a garrison of 2,000 men. Its massive outer walls, up to 3 meters thick, were built on a slope to make enemy projectiles deflect downwards, reducing their impact. Impregnable, the fortress was considered unconquerable. Even Saladin's massive Muslim armies failed to breach its defenses. It was finally surrendered in 1273, only after the defenders were shown a forged letter ordering them to evacuate, the only way the Crac could be taken. Atlit Fortress, a crucial maritime outpost located on the Mediterranean coast. Its primary mission was to protect pilgrims and trade routes connecting the Holy Land with Europe. Its mighty walls made it impregnable from both land and sea. Atlit became one of the last Christian strongholds in the Middle East, with its garrison holding out even after the fall of Acre. Tortosa Fortress, located in modern-day Lebanon, this coastal stronghold was never taken by assault. It played a key role in the Templars' intelligence network, as the Crusaders monitored the movements of Muslim armies and tracked trade routes from here. With the proliferation of fortresses and land holdings, the Templars evolved from a mere knightly order into an independent political power. Their military bases, in both the Holy Land and Europe, allowed them to maintain complete autonomy from kings and feudal lords. They answered only to the Pope, meaning they could pursue their own foreign policy without needing permission from local rulers. This made them a dangerous player on the international stage. The Battle of Montgisard. When discipline triumphs over numbers. One of the most famous battles where the order displayed its military prowess was the Battle of Montgisard, 1177, where a force of just 500 knights and a few thousand infantry routed Saladin's massive army. The threat. By the autumn of 1177, the Holy Land faced a new wave of war. Sultan Saladin's colossal army, over 26,000 organized troops, including elite Mamluks, was advancing from the south. Saladin's target was Ascalon, a vital coastal city that supplied the Kingdom of Jerusalem. Its fall would have opened the road to the Holy City. The king's decision. Jerusalem had no army capable of stopping the advance. The castles were garrisoned, but the forces were scattered. Most nobles favored locking themselves behind walls and enduring a siege. However, King Baldwin IV, just 16 years old and afflicted with leprosy, made a different choice. He decided to strike first. The odds. Under his banner were only 500 knights and a few thousand infantry. Crucially, this force included a small but invaluable contingent of about 80 Templars, hardened elite warriors. No one believed they could challenge Saladin with such meager forces. No one except Baldwin and his knights. The surprise attack. Saladin was not expecting resistance. His army was marching in a relaxed, overstretched formation, convinced that any Crusader forces could be dealt with piecemeal. Baldwin, however, saw his chance to attack when the enemy was disorganized and unprepared. He marched his troops toward the hills, where they caught sight of the Muslim army. Baldwin carried the relic of the true cross forward. His warriors knelt, praying to God, knowing they were unlikely to return from the field. Then, Baldwin gave the order to attack. The Templar wedge. The Templars led the charge. They formed a massive, unbroken wedge designed to slice through the enemy lines. They did not hesitate or lose formation. Their ranks were the tip of a spear plunging into the heart of the foe. They crashed into the Muslim vanguard, shattering their formations and sowing panic. The rout. Saladin tried to rally his forces, but his army had no time to form a battle line. The leading elements were already routed. Mamluks, accustomed to flanking maneuvers, couldn't adapt. The tightly disciplined, unified charge of the Crusaders gave them an enormous advantage. The battle lasted all day. The Crusaders attacked in waves, leveraging the surprise and the chaos in the enemy ranks. A victory, not the end. By evening, the battle was won. Saladin's remaining army fled. The Sultan himself narrowly escaped capture. Montgisard was a triumph of discipline and tactics over overwhelming numbers. It was a testament to the Templars' endurance, cold calculation, and iron will that briefly halted the Muslim advance. But the joy was short-lived. Baldwin knew he had won the battle, but not the war. Saladin learned from his defeat and swore he would never make the same mistake. He would return with a more powerful, better prepared army. And next time, even the bravery of the Templars would not save Jerusalem. King Baldwin IV died without leaving an heir. After years of instability, the throne of Jerusalem was seized by Guy of Lusignan, a man characterized as weak, volatile, and possessing poor military acumen. Internal divisions grew. Many barons distrusted the new king. Though the Templars remained the Crusaders' main fighting force, they could no longer single-handedly hold the Holy Land. The siren call of Hattin, a trap. set by Saladin capitalized on this disarray. For several years, he systematically weakened his enemies, launching raids, cutting off supply lines to fortresses, and disrupting trade routes. The Crusaders could only watch their kingdom slowly hemorrhage, yet they held out hope that they could withstand his onslaught if they could force a decisive, pitched battle. This was precisely what Saladin wanted. He waited for the Crusaders to abandon their defensive walls and march straight into his deadly trap. In early July 1187, Saladin's army invaded Galilee, laying siege to the city of Tiberias. This was a calculated provocation. King Guy could not abandon the city's inhabitants, but a march to their relief was tantamount to suicide. The Templars and seasoned knights understood the reality. Marching in the brutal July heat, under the relentless sun, and without reliable water sources, would doom the army. The fateful decision. The Grand Master of the Templars, Gerard de Riedefort, initially opposed the march, but tragically changed his mind. He argued the army could not sit idle in Jerusalem while the enemy devoured their lands. Other barons also clamored for a fight. The disastrous decision was made to march out and engage Saladin in open battle. The army's descent. The Crusader army, numbering around 20,000 men, including all available knights, infantry, and order warriors, set out from a town with a water source toward Tiberias. Saladin had meticulously planned their route, positioning his army to cut off the Crusaders from water. He knew that in that climate, thirst would kill the army faster than swords. The trap. Springs. The Crusaders moved slowly, struggling across the parched plain under an oppressive sun. Water supplies dwindled hours before they reached the next source. Saladin then ordered his riders to attack. They didn't engage in close combat, but harassed the Crusaders with arrows from a distance, preventing any further movement. The Night of Torment. By nightfall, the Crusaders were trapped. Exhausted, dehydrated, and with horses collapsing, their only hope was to break through to the Sea of Galilee, but the path was blocked. The Black Day, the Battle of Hattin, July 4th, 1187. The next morning, the Crusader army found itself encircled, taking a final defensive stand on two hills near the village of Hattin. They were utterly without water. Saladin ordered his warriors to set the dry brush ablaze, and hot smoke blanketed the Crusader positions. Dehydrated and weakened, the men could barely raise their swords. When the Muslim army charged, the odds were hopelessly stacked. By midday, the battle was over. King Guy was captured, along with almost all the major barons. Gerard de Riedefort, the Templar Grand Master, also fell prisoner. The execution. The true tragedy followed. When the prisoners were brought to Saladin's tent, the Sultan gave the order to execute all captured Templars and Hospitallers. They were considered too dangerous to be left alive. They were beheaded directly in front of the captured king. The stain on the order, Gerard de Riedefort, however, was spared this fate. He didn't face death like his brothers. He humbly awaited his sentence and was soon freed in exchange for the surrender of several key Crusader fortresses. This act left a permanent stain on his reputation. The Templars had always boasted that their warriors chose death over capture, and that no Templar surrendered without a fight. Yet their master had not only surrendered, but used his position to save his life at the cost of vital castles. Hattin was more than just a defeat. It was the total collapse of the Crusader cause. The army was virtually annihilated. Within 3 months, the Muslims entered Jerusalem. The Templars lost their main stronghold, and their role in the Holy Land began to fade. Everything they had built over nearly a century crumbled in a single day. The last stand, The Siege and Fall of Acre, 1291. By the end of the 13th century, the Christian states in the East were living on borrowed time. After the rout at Hattin and the loss of Jerusalem, the Crusaders never fully recovered. Their once mighty kingdom shrank to a narrow coastal strip, and fortresses and cities fell one by one. European monarchs were no longer rushing to send armies. The Crusades had lost their appeal, and papal calls for new expeditions were increasingly met with indifference. The last hope for the Christians rested on Acre, the capital of the weakened Kingdom of Jerusalem. This port city was the key citadel and the major trading hub, through which Eastern goods flowed to Europe, and knights, pilgrims, and supplies arrived in reverse. If Acre fell, Christian power in the Holy Land would vanish forever. By 1290, the end was nigh. The Sultan of Egypt, Al-Ashraf Khalil, determined to complete the work begun by his predecessors, gathered a huge army to obliterate the remaining Christian footholds. The final battle. In the spring of 1291, Muslim forces besieged Acre, initiating the Crusaders' last great battle for the Holy Land. The Templars were among the city's chief defenders. Their order, though weakened, still retained its discipline and military skill. Their powerful citadel in Acre was heavily fortified and nearly impregnable. The assault. The Muslim army was vastly superior, numbering around 200,000 men against a garrison of only about 10,000 crusaders and mercenaries. The attackers employed siege towers, trebuchets, and dedicated sapper teams who spent weeks tunneling beneath the fortifications. The Crusaders fought desperately, but the Muslims systematically shattered the city walls. The Templar citadel. By mid-May, the city was doomed. When Muslim troops breached the walls, a massacre ensued. The Templars retreated to their citadel, a massive fortress by the sea, the last Christian bastion in the Holy Land. The Sultan offered terms of surrender, but the Grand Master refused. The end. The battle for the citadel lasted days, with the walls remaining unbreached. Although a truce was offered, it ended in treachery. On May 25th, the last remaining defenders were killed, and the fortress itself was blown up. The Christian history of the Holy Land was over. The surviving Templars fled to Cyprus. Their order still existed, but the loss of the Holy Land meant their original mission was obsolete. The Grail and the Temple, mystical artifacts and hidden knowledge. With the loss of their military purpose, a flood of myths and enigmas began to swirl around the order. One of the most enduring symbols linked to the Templars is the Holy Grail, the Arthurian connection. The legend of the Grail long predates the Templars. Early mentions appear in Arthurian legends from the 12th century. Chrétien de Troyes described it not as the cup of the Last Supper, but as a magical vessel carrying a sacred grace. Later texts transformed it into the holy chalice used by Christ, later collecting his blood at the crucifixion, creating a link to early Christianity and secret brotherhoods. The Templar link. Some theories suggest the Templars became the Grail's guardians, holding special relics brought back from Jerusalem. The connection was also symbolic. The Templars were seen as more than mere warriors, but secret custodians of Christian wisdom. The Cathar theory, a unique angle. A different layer of the legend arose from the Cathars, a Christian movement persecuted by the Catholic Church. Some later theories claimed the Cathars possessed the Grail or another relic and transferred it to the Templars just before their destruction. This turned the Grail from a literary symbol into a mystical secret tied to the vanishing treasures of the order. The Temple of Solomon, the Great Secret. If the Grail remained primarily a myth, the Templars' connection to the Temple of Solomon was very real. The name. When the order was founded, Its knights were housed in the old temple compound on the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, taking the name Poor Knights of Christ and of the Temple of Solomon. The rumors of discovery. During their first few years, when they were few and not actively fighting, their main purpose was believed to be the exploration of the temple ruins. When the order suddenly acquired great wealth and power, rumors spread that the Templars had found something that changed their destiny. Unique theories on the discovery. The Ark of the Covenant. One popular theory suggests they found the Ark of the Covenant, the greatest Old Testament relic, hidden before the First Temple's destruction. Forbidden texts. Another theory connects the Templars to secret texts that could reveal knowledge different from official Christian doctrine. Rumors persisted that they found ancient scrolls containing a secret about the origins of Christianity, which could explain their later conflict with the papacy. Real gold. A simpler explanation is that the Templars found real treasure, gold, jewels, or relics, which they used to fund their rise to power. Their incredible wealth grew rapidly, suggesting their secret treasure was not a mystical artifact, but tangible riches. While no evidence of these findings exists, we know the Templars were based at the Temple of Solomon and carried out excavations. We know they became immensely powerful soon after. Everything else remains conjecture and legend, fueled over the centuries by their wealth and secrecy. Esoteric legacies, from Freemasonry to alchemy. The idea that the Templars' power stemmed from ancient knowledge rather than just money took root in the Middle Ages. Their association with the Temple of Solomon led many to suspect the order had found something more valuable than gold. Freemasonry, a unique analogy. These ideas later merged with the rise of Masonic lodges in the 17th century. The belief emerged that the Templars' lost knowledge was passed down through Freemasonry. Masons revered the Temple of Solomon as a sacred symbol, and their initiation rituals echoed the strict discipline of the knightly orders. Some Masonic branches explicitly claim a direct lineage from the Templars. Alchemy, a unique angle. In the 18th and 19th centuries, the idea emerged that the Templars were linked to alchemy. In the Middle Ages, alchemy was seen as a system of good knowledge related to the transformation of matter, immortality, and the search for the philosopher's stone. Rumors suggested the Templars had acquired knowledge, perhaps from Arab scholars who were ahead of Europe in natural sciences, that allowed them to create gold or utilize unknown technologies. Romanticism and mysticism. The Romantic era of the 19th century painted the Templars as secret magicians, initiated into the hidden laws of the universe. The reality check. Scientifically, none of these theories have proof. No reliable documents link the Templars to alchemy or Freemasonry, nor are there archaeological records of manuscripts found in the Temple of Solomon. The Templars were rich and powerful, but their true secret lay in their ability to manage resources, conduct military campaigns, and build sophisticated state structures. All later theories emerged centuries after their destruction, becoming part of the mythology that transformed a military fraternity into a symbol of global mystery. The Debt and the Downfall. King Philip IV of France. By the early 14th century, the Templar Order was still one of Europe's most influential organizations. They had lost the Holy Land, but not their wealth or power. Their commanderies stretched across Western Europe. They owned lands, castles, ports, and trade routes, controlled banking operations, and issued loans to kings. They answered to no monarch. Their sole patron was the Pope, making them independent even of the most powerful rulers. This independence bred resentment. In France, where the order held significant sway, the Templars acquired an enemy who would ultimately destroy them: King Philip IV. The Fair. The king's financial ruin. Philip IV's reign was plagued by constant, expensive wars. His treasury was empty. He had already resorted to seizing assets and expelling Jews to raise money, but it wasn't enough. Loans from the Templars became his only recourse. The fatal debt. The Templars had loaned him enormous sums, but it became clear that he could not repay the debt. At this point, a dangerous idea took root. If he couldn't pay his creditor, he would destroy him. The political threat. Money was not Philip's only motive. He sought to establish absolute royal authority in Europe, and the Templars were a massive roadblock. The order was too powerful and too independent. Their fortresses across France were effectively a state within a state, not subject to the king. Their financial operations transcended the monarchy, and crucially, they answered only to the Pope. Philip had already fought for control of the church, virtually subjecting the papacy to his influence. By 1303, he secured the election of Pope Clement V, who owed him his power. The king expected to control the Templars next, but the order refused to become a part of the French crown. Thus, by early 1307, Philip arrived at one final solution. The order had to vanish. King Philip IV's move was a masterstroke, solving two problems at once. He wiped out his massive debts and eliminated a dangerous political rival. However, destroying such a powerful, entrenched organization was no mean feat. If the king had merely declared war, the Templars could have retreated to their mighty fortresses and organized a formidable resistance. Philip needed a pretext, a legal justification that would make their destruction legitimate in the eyes of the church and the people. He soon found this cause, leading to the infamous Friday, October 13th, 1307, the day the order effectively ceased to exist. The surprise attack, a coup de grace. By the autumn of 1307, the Templars were entirely oblivious that their days of power were numbered. The Grand Master, Jacques de Molay, was in Paris at the king's invitation, confident the order's status remained intact. They still owned lands, fortresses, and vast financial resources, and Pope Clement V, despite French pressure, was reluctant to condemn them. Philip IV chose a different strategy, a lightning strike that would catch the Templars completely flat-footed. The secret plan. Philip prepared the operation in advance. Secret orders were dispatched to royal governors across France weeks before the strike, but they were not to be opened before the appointed date. The arrest. In the early hours of October 13th, 1307, thousands of royal soldiers swept across France, carrying orders to arrest every member of the order simultaneously. The Templars were caught off guard. They were confident in the papacy's protection and had not reinforced their positions. The aftermath. In a single night, the order lost its leaders, its treasury's control, its administration, and all communication between garrisons. Jacques de Molay was captured in Paris without a fight, under the false pretense of a personal papal command. Royal forces seized the main Templar treasury, but the order's most valuable treasures had vanished. By the morning of October 14th, all of France knew that the once invincible Templars had fallen in a single evening. The fabricated charges, heresy and blasphemy. The arrests were only the beginning. The king now had to prove that the order truly deserved annihilation. Philip could not simply admit he destroyed the Templars for their money. To justify the mass arrests, he needed something that would turn the order into enemies of Christendom. The most heinous crimes of the era were heresy, witchcraft, and betrayal of the Christian faith. These were the accusations leveled against the Templars. Baphomet. One of the most bizarre charges was the supposed worship of Baphomet. Interrogators claimed the order kept a strange head to which they offered secret sacrifice. Some confessions described it as a skull, others as a bearded statue, and a few as a goat-headed demon. The name was unknown in Christian documents before the trial. Some historians suggest Baphomet was a French mispronunciation of Muhammad, implying forbidden contact with Muslims. Regardless, there is no real evidence the Templars ever worshipped Baphomet. Spitting on the cross. Another key accusation claimed that during initiation, novices were forced to spit on the cross and deny Christ. Interrogators alleged this ritual proved the novice's ultimate loyalty to the order, even over his faith. This claim also has no mention in records prior to 1307 and was likely fabricated to demonstrate the order's secret apostasy. Immoral rites, a unique angle. A third shocking accusation involved sinful rituals and homosexual acts between knights. During interrogations, Templars were forced to confess to kissing each other on the lips, navel, and buttocks, allegedly symbolizing complete submission to the order. Historians are certain this charge was completely manufactured. In the Middle Ages, sodomy was a mortal sin, and such claims were designed to blacken the order's name in the eyes of the populace. The Crucible of Torment. Confessions under torture. The order did not surrender easily. Many knights initially refused to confess to heresy, proclaiming the accusations false. This was unacceptable to the king. Philip could not allow the Templars to publicly refute the charges before the church and the people. A wave of systematic torture began, designed to break the knight's will and force the desired confessions. The French Inquisition was highly experienced in brutal methods, and the Templars were subjected to the worst forms of medieval agony. The rack and fire. In the dungeons, they were hung by their arms, their joints were dislocated, their skin was burned, and they were stretched on the rack. The punishments were calculated not to kill, but to crush the victim's spirit. The lies. Under this relentless cruelty, confessions began to appear. Knights, driven to the brink of death, agreed to confirm any accusation, denying Christ, worshipping Baphomet, and participating in secret rites, just to end the suffering. Retractions and execution. However, as soon as some Templars were temporarily released, they immediately retracted their confessions, declaring they were forced to lie under torture. This presented a problem for the Inquisition. They were then forced to re-torture them or immediately condemn them for the capital offense of recanting a confessed heresy. The final curse, Jacques de Molay. Philip IV needed not just confessions, but the total erasure of the order from memory. In 1312, Pope Clement V, having failed to maintain neutrality, was compelled to submit to the king's pressure and officially dissolve the order. This marked the end of the Templars as an organization. The king, however, demanded a final spectacle for the order's leaders. The final stand. Jacques de Molay, who had led the order since the late 13th century, was a man of faith, not a political schemer. When arrested, he held on to the hope that the church would intervene. After 7 years of imprisonment, interrogation, and forced confessions, he was brought to the square in front of Notre Dame Cathedral in 1314 to hear his sentence. The retraction. The king's plan was for de Molay to publicly confess and repent. Instead, the Grand Master retracted all his confessions, loudly declaring that the Templars were innocent and had been unjustly destroyed. It was an act of defiance the king could not ignore. The pyre. The very next day, March 18, 1314, Jacques de Molay and his comrades were burned at the stake on the Ile de la Cité. Legend claims that as the flames enveloped him, de Molay pronounced a solemn curse upon his chief persecutors. Pope Clement, King Philip, before a year is out, you will answer before God's tribunal. The eerie coincidence. Though the curse may have been invented decades later, the fact remains striking. Both his enemies died within a year of his execution. Pope Clement V died on April 20th, 1314, barely a month after de Molay's death, reportedly suffering a mysterious, agonizing illness. Philip IV died in November 1314, after a sudden, mysterious affliction. These coincidences gave birth to the legend of the Templar curse. In the subsequent years, Philip IV's dynasty quickly died out, and France plunged into the chaos of the 100 Years' War. The undying legacy, myths, and the missing treasure. The Order of the Templars was officially crushed, its assets seized, and its legacy tarnished. But its story did not fade. On the contrary, with every passing century, it became more enigmatic, transforming the destroyed order into a symbol of secret knowledge, conspiracies, and mystical power. The question of survival. The key question remains: did the Templars truly vanish without a trace? Some theories argue that the order was never fully destroyed, and its legacy continued in unexpected forms. The Swiss connection, a unique theory. One persistent theory suggests that a faction of knights escaped arrest and fled to the region that would become Switzerland. Decades after the order's demise, Swiss mercenaries emerged, known for their rigid discipline and independence, acting as an autonomous brotherhood rather than serving a king. Furthermore, the first independent banking structures appeared in Switzerland during this period, famous for the secret protection of deposits, leading to the hypothesis that the Templars laid the foundation for this future financial system using their vast expertise. However, there is no direct evidence to support the claim that the knights found refuge in Switzerland. The enduring mystery, culture, and commerce. Over 7 centuries later, the Templar name is firmly etched in history. They have been transformed into something more than just knights. In the 18th century, Romantics portrayed them as victims of a conspiracy, and by the 20th century, they became the ultimate symbol of secret knowledge unavailable to the masses. Pop culture phenomena. Their image penetrated literature, cinema, and video games. Films like Indiana Jones and The Last Crusade, and books such as The Da Vinci Code made them a cornerstone of popular mythology. Games like Assassin's Creed gave new life to the legend of their enduring feud with secret societies. Why the myth? Their sudden, violent disappearance and the unrecovered wealth created a pervasive feeling that there was more to the story than the official account. The real legacy. If we look beyond the myths, the Templars' true legacy lies not in conspiracy or mysticism, but in the principles they pioneered. Their expertise in financial operations, the creation of systems for credit and money transfer, their iron military discipline, and the chivalric code. They began as warrior monks, but their legacy far exceeds the bounds of knighthood. They became an eternal symbol of secret power, and their story remains one of the most enigmatic chapters of the Middle Ages.